Hello. Today I'm going to make something called gourmet goulash. I've had this recipe for many years. A friend of mine years ago got it from a magazine and she showed it to me, made it for me one evening with a couple of girlfriends, and I've had it all these years. So here's the recipe. I still have it. And this recipe has paprika in it. It has red wine, and it bakes for like an hour and a half. And I have some tri-tip that I've had frozen, really good quality, and so I don't need to cook it. I'm going to brown it, and everything goes in the oven anyway, but today you're going to see the meat already cooked that I'm going to use. So I hope you enjoy this recipe. These are the items that go into making the goulash. Here's the tri-tip I was telling you about. There's paprika, garlic powder, salt, pepper, tomato sauce, an onion, and red wine. And I always use a really good wine that I would like to drink as well. So I'm using Raised Creek Merlot. So here we go. Okay, so we start with one whole onion. It's a large onion that we use. Her recipe actually calls for several onions, but I've never understood why. So I've never used all those onions that it calls for. One large onion is plenty. Like I said, I change recipes sometimes. I add or subtract or do whatever I think is, appropriate for the recipe. This particular recipe, I think it calls for like 5 or 6 onions, and I've never used those. So that's one kind of little mistake I think the recipe kind of has. I don't think it needs that many onions. Okay, I'm crying again. These onions, this is a stronger onion than the one I used earlier. This is a white onion. White and red are my favorite onions. I'm having a hard time cutting this because my eyes are watering and I can't see really well. So anyway, I'll chop the other half. I don't know if you can see or not, but my eyes are tearing quite a bit. Okay, here's our chopped onions. Normally I would saute them in butter, and that's what I would have sauteed the meat in. That's what the recipe called for. But since the meat's already cooked, and I do have some leftover bacon grease here, it's not a lot of grease, but it's enough to cook these onions and kind of brown the meat in, so that's what I'm going to do. So these will be sauteed till they're translucent. Not for a long, lengthy time. Just enough to have the onions just sauteed and translucent. So we're just sauteing these for, it'll probably be about 2 or 3 minutes. And while these are sauteing, we're going to cut the meat up. Okay, this tri-tip does not need to be seasoned. It was already seasoned quite a bit. This is a very large piece of meat, so it was delicious, the other ones we had. So there is some fat on here which I'm going to cut off. What happens after this is I'm just going to saute it with the onions. Normally I would take the onions out after I saute them and brown this meat separately from the onions. But since this meat has already been cooked, I don't need to do that. I don't need to remove the onions that are sauteing right now and do this separately because this meat's been cooked already. So I'm just going to chop this up and add it to the onions, brown it for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then everything's going to go in a casserole dish. In the 70s, casseroles were very popular. So the only difference is that this, after it's cooked, it goes over egg noodles because it's a goulash. But at the same time, it's kind of like a casserole. They were, like I said, very, very popular in the 70s. So I'm going to continue to chop up this tri-tip, and I'll get back with you when it's time to saute it. I will be cutting the fat off of this. Not like the pork where I would keep it and cook it on. Yeah, this has been cooked already, but in this case, this fat will be removed from the actual meat that we're going to be cooking in there. Okay, this is how you want your onions to be. And I'm going to add the meat now. And this meat, this tri-tip, was kind of like a medium rare when it was cooked. So we're going to brown this a little, and it's going to be probably more like a medium once it's all cooked together. You could cook it longer if you want your meat well done. I mean, obviously this meal starts with the meat uncooked. I just happen to have some leftover frozen tri-tip that we cooked, and we had a lot of it. We had a big party, so that's why I'm cooking. I'm just going to brown the meat like this. So this will take probably about 5 minutes. Okay, the meat has been browning for probably 10 minutes longer than it probably really needed. So now I'm going to add flour and paprika. And the amounts, of course, as always, will show in my description underneath the recipe, or in the recipe underneath the video. So I'm mixing all the flour and paprika together. And then we're going to add the tomato sauce. And mix that around. Turn up the heat just a little to start absorbing this. This is, like I said, it's all going to go in a casserole dish. Put the sour cream in. And we'll add the wine the very last after we absorb all this. Most goulashes have sour cream and like a tomato base. It's not uncommon, but there are many, many variations of goulash. It's super varied, lots of them. So after you have your sour cream combined, we're going to add the wine. So it's going to have a kind of a different color, like a very autumny color. And then, of course, we've got the burgundy color we're adding to it. So it's kind of a really colorful meal. So what we do now is just stir and blend together. And your oven should be preheated to 350. The recipe says 375. That's always been the recipe, but I do it at 350. I like to cook this meat, just the whole meal in general, because it's more tender like the lower your temperature is. So I'm cooking this meal at 350 for an hour and a half. So here's the goulash sauce. It's all mixed together. I'm going to put the lid on it, and it's going to go in the oven. Like I said, it calls for 375, but I go with 350 for an hour and a half. So there it goes. It's in the oven. We're going to set the timer for 90 minutes. Okay, while we're waiting for the goulash to cook, I'm going to have myself a nice glass of Merlot. Like I said before, I never cook with a wine that I wouldn't drink myself. This is a really good wine. It's a Raised Creek Merlot, and it's going to taste really good in that goulash. So, cheers. Okay, I'm still enjoying some of my wine, and I'm getting ready to boil some of our egg noodles. The goulash has about 15 minutes left, and so while that's happening, I'm boiling some water and I'm going to boil the noodles, and by the time the goulash is ready, it'll set for about 10 minutes. I'll take it out of the oven and let it set to thicken and kind of cool a little, because it'll be scalding hot when it comes out. And then we'll be ready to serve. Okay, I just added the pasta to the boiling salt water. It should take about 8 to 10 minutes. It's in salted water, so it should be ready soon. Okay, so here's the goulash sauce. It's all ready. It's been sitting out for about 10 minutes. You can see the thickness of it. It's just right. So it's been sitting about 10 minutes. Here's the pasta. You always want it slightly al dente. You do not want pasta to be like overcooked, because it's really horrible. It swells. So this is just how you want it. It's a little al dente. It's done. It's just not overdone. So this is exactly what you want. Okay, here it is. Here's the finished goulash. You just pour the sauce over the noodles, and we'll have to taste test it next. Okay, time for the taste test. This is really, really good. First of all, the consistency is just right. It's thick. It's not runny. It's just the right consistency. The egg noodles are cooked just how they're supposed to be. Everything is perfect. So let me try it. Delicious. The meat is tender. This is a real Hungarian goulash. I hope you'll give it a try. You will love it. Thanks for watching.